I'm really excited to talk. I've actually never talked about this.
It's one of the greatest rock and roll performances I've ever seen.
And then we pounded, we fist bumped.
Nice. And he was very open with me, and he taught me a lot of great music.
I've been watching Blippi for the last 3 weeks. I haven't had a chance to see it yet.
What is this crap?
Delivery.
Wow.
I played enough solos in the 80s. I don't have to do that anymore.
Are you good? All right, 92.9 and 96.9 EHM. Morning show with Anthony here. Happy to have special guests. We're on location. We're out in front of the beautiful Guild Hall. Taylor Goldsmith of Dawes is with us. Taylor, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
My best friend in the whole world. At least that's what I tell people. G.E. Smith.
Yeah.
How you doing,
How are you, buddy?
It's so good to see you, dude.
Always.
This is the portrait series where you get to actually play together and have conversation, which is kind of a rarity in the concert business. Taylor, I'll throw it to you first. How refreshing is that to kind of just have a laid-back show like this?
It's cool. I mean, it totally it changes the pace, but in a really exciting way. Normally, I'm sure, G, you can relate. Like normally, like one song bleeds into the next one, and we try to, you churn up the energy in that way. But to pause in between and to talk and to explore the song and like kind of dissect it or analyze, I'm really excited about that because I think that's going to add a whole new component that frankly doesn't exist in our show, or anyone's, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's a unique thing that GE gets to do. GE, what was out of the obvious things that they're awesome, what were the draws for getting Dawes in here for a portrait show?
I always loved Dawes because, as we were talking about earlier, me and Taylor and the other guys in the band, great songs. When I go to learn people's songs, if it's easy, I know that they're good songs, and these songs, as I started listening to them in the last couple of weeks, it was just boom, Also, I've heard a lot of these songs on EHM, When My Time Comes, all your favorite bands. They're just great songs.
Because we're mildly obsessed.
Yeah, man.
we can see psychotic obsession from where we sit here at EHM, totally. But you guys have a weird 6 degrees of separation thing going on too, where you played and worked with Bob Dylan a whole ton, and you got to work on the Basement tapes.
Right.
What was that like doing that?
That was amazing. I mean, it's cool because on the Basement tapes thing, you see all these song credits where it says like such and such by Taylor Goldsmith and Bob Dylan, which is the coolest looking thing in the world. But we didn't hang out. We didn't actually write it together. I was given lyrics that he wrote in the 60s and I wrote music to it. So sure, you could technically call it a co-write, but it's not it isn't in the sense of like two guys sitting down and getting together and writing. Like he even showed, weirdly, when we were making that record, I've actually never talked about this, when I was standing in the hallway one day talking to Elvis Costello about the whole thing and his relationship with Bob, because they have a friendship, and as we're talking about it at Capitol in Los Angeles, down the hall walks Bob Dylan, and I had no idea why he would be there, and Elvis, so I stood back, but Elvis kind of walked right up to him and was like, "Bob, what are you doing here?" And he was like, "Oh, hey man, what are you doing here?" And like, and
that sounds right.
And Elvis was like, "You know what I'm doing here?" And Bob just laughed like, "Ha ha," and walked away. And that was the end of the conversation. And he was mastering a record. And as we talked about it afterwards, like he knows about this project that we're doing, but he just kind of pretended not to, and he avoided us. But did you guys get really close?
I don't know. I played with him for several years. The first year, almost to the day, he didn't hardly say anything except like he'd kind of hi. And then we talk about, let's start with Maggie's Farm tonight. We do a song list, but we wouldn't talk.
Conversation.
And then almost a year to the day when I joined the band, we're coming off stage at the Indiana State Fair, and I feel that hand on my shoulder, and he goes, "Hey, ride with me tonight." Go in his bus instead of the band bus. And then from then on, he was very open with me, and he taught me a lot of great music.
Oh man! And
cool?
I would imagine, because like that was one of the coolest things about that new documentary, where in the credits you realize that he's been on tour ever since Rolling Thunder.
Rolling Thunder, yeah.
Almost like exclusive, like almost entirely that whole time from 1976 to now. He's on tour the better part of every year, and it just grows and grows and grows, and it makes you realize like he's a perfect example of what it looks like when you live for music.
Yeah,
Beyond
absolutely.
anyone else that I think we've ever heard of.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, totally.
He doesn't. I mean, he just stays on the road. We would have a month off or something. We'd beg him for time off at Christmas, so we could see our families, and we'd give us some time off. And he'd call me, 2 weeks into the month off. Hey, how are you? Good, Bob. How you doing? Where are you, Bob? Oh, I'm out in the bus. I'm outside of Meridian, Mississippi. He would ride around in the bus until we came back to the next gig. He's the real thing.
That's one of my favorite stories that he tells.
Yeah.
So
Which, by the way, when I make GE tell me Bob Dylan stories, his impression is exactly what you just did. You guys have the
Yeah.
same Bob Dylan impression, by the way.
He's something. In that Rolling Thunder, you've seen it, right? That
Yeah,
documentary?
yeah, it's amazing.
His performance of ISIS
Oh, it's
in
possessed.
that is one of the greatest
Yeah.
rock and roll
Yes.
performances I've ever seen. That's up there with Mick Jagger, Little
Yeah.
Richard, anybody you want
I
to talk
said the
about.
same thing. That's so
It's-
cool to hear you say that.
That's maximum rock and
It
roll.
really is. The look in his eyes. It's like this man is possessed.
So, but what did you do when you were there with Elvis? You just kind of just stepped back.
I
and let
stepped
them-
back and just like couldn't really believe it. And then I did meet him once, like kind of properly. Well, when we toured with him in 2013, and he didn't talk to us at all. And then on the last day of the tour, when he was walking to his bus, I was kind of in his periphery, and he has his entourage when he goes to the bus, like security guards and whatever.
Yeah.
And he peels off and he walks right up to me and he's like, "What's the name of that last ballad you guys play?"
Yeah.
And I told him the name of the song, and he's like, "That's a great song." And then we fist bumped,
Nice.
and I was freaking out. I was like, "This is as cool as it gets."
That was it. That was the
And
blessing.
then he
That's
took
the
off,
thing.
and now it's
Bob's always paying attention.
Yeah.
He puts on this little act of like being out of it and stuff.
Yeah.
He's totally paying attention all the time.
Yeah.
To everything. He knows what's happening.
But don't you feel like at that point you have to act the way he acts because he means so much to so many people? Like,
it's like, yeah, totally. I mean, it must be weird. I mean, yeah.
But hey, let's talk about Dawes.
Yeah.
we're just geeking out about Bob
Yeah.
Dylan. Yeah, let's talk about Dawes.
Talk about
One of the more prolific bands I think we have seen ever. 6 records, right? 10 years.
The 7th is in the can, just so you know.
7th is in-
Get out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all recorded.
Taylor, I heard a rumor today. If I said something to you about red vinyl, would that mean anything to you?
Oh yeah, we
Talk about it.
We released we're going to release our first album, 10-year anniversary. It was released in September of 2009.
North Hills.
Right.
Yeah, North Hills, and we're releasing on on like a red vinyl with a 7-inch of 2 tracks that didn't make the record that were recorded at the time.
Nice.
So we're excited that's getting back out there.
And isn't some of that money going to go to help?
Yeah, it's gonna go. Man, it's so cool. You know all this stuff.
I heard, man. I
you know this
listen,
stuff better
man.
than
I
me.
pay attention.
It's-
Wait, later. Wait, hear what I'm going to ask you.
There's this.
He's transitioning to host,
Yeah.
doing these portrait shows. Yeah.
It's a Silver Lake Music Conservatory in Los Angeles, where all these kids are getting lessons and learning how to play and playing with each other. A lot of the money from this new red vinyl is going to that.
Great.
That's so cool, man. How does that album feel to you 10 years later?
I mean, it's funny. We're like revisiting some of those songs we don't play that often, and I'm like looking at lyrics. I'm like, what is this crap? But I think that's how. I think it's important to feel that way. I mean, I'm very proud of it. It feels youthful. I was youthful. It feels like a little bit all over the place. I was a little bit all over the place.
Right.
So I'm indebted to that record, and I love it for all the things that kind of drive me a little crazy about it.
Right.
And then the songs that I still would be proud to write now I feel deeply lucky to have, because there's songs where it's like, okay, this represents who I was at 21, therefore I'm happy to play it.
Yeah.
And then there's other songs that represent me even now at 33. So like that's pretty. I feel like that doesn't happen that much.
And I mean, you just got married, so you're kind of going through that big transition in life now where it's like marriage and, I got married, I got 2 kids.
Yeah,
Nice.
he's like a married. He's
This-
a family guy. He
yeah,
talks about
yeah.
it all the time.
Yeah. When you guys were talking about the Rolling Thunder thing, I was like, I've been watching Blippi for the last 3 weeks. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. I'm all out of the conversation. But I'm wondering, like, and now that you have the 7th record in the can, oh my God, like, did you feel that sort of creep into your...
Yeah, someone kind of a songwriter friend warned me, like, yeah, man, you get married and you have kids, you stop writing songs. I promise. Like, what a horrible thing to say to someone.
Thanks.
Yeah. But I found, I mean, I don't have kids, but I found that getting married, it shifted the lens. It shifted my perspective. I think rather than looking inward all the time, I was able to start looking outward.
Yeah.
Costello's actually a good example of that. He's someone that you listen to the early records and there's a lot of there's a lot of me, and then you get to the later records and there's a lot of her and him and you, and he's able to occupy other people's experiences, and I feel like that is the fingerprint of a great writer, someone that doesn't have to draw only from themselves. And so now that I am living in a bit more of a domestic moment, I actually it's been liberating. I've found that our records, even this last one, Passwords, it feels a lot more. It feels about all sorts of things. Whereas if you go back to our second record, it seems like it's about Taylor wanting to get a date.
But I feel like Passwords was in that Springsteen style of holding up a mirror to the world.
Right.
Kind of like, this is how we're communicating. This is how we're, which I'm super obsessed with, social and that whole Internet 2.0. And this is, I think, the biggest tectonic shift that we've had since the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah, it's screwing with everything. I mean, I was talking about the other day, even our, this weird obsession with documenting things. We're experiencing so little, and we go to shows and we want to film it. It's like, well, I got to document my experience. And the reality is, not that many years ago, you just went to a show. You didn't have a picture to show all your friends.
Right.
You didn't get the selfie. You just were there and you experienced things, and then you let it go. And now we have this thing of everything has to be permanent now. We have to be able to take it with us to show to everyone the next day. I don't know. Obviously, the songs aren't just about that, but I just find that it's changing us in these very weird fundamental ways that you wouldn't necessarily think about it. And it's cool. I mean, this is what it means to be a human being. I'm not mad at it. I'm not saying why can't we go back.
Right.
I'm just fascinated by it.
Right. And do you find yourself, because I know you like to read a lot when you guys are out on tour, but do you find yourself reading articles and looking into that stuff, or do you find that your view of the world is literally just from traveling around and visiting a town and walking around and seeing the people? I don't
read studies on how our phones are messing with our brains. I feel like I experienced that enough firsthand. So I'm I try to keep my nose in a book or frankly just away from a phone. I mean, I think we all. I mean, I think that phones and technology and all that is amazing, but I feel like it requires a certain discipline to be kind of optimized, and it's a discipline that I don't personally feel like I can live up to. Knowing when to draw a line, knowing when to put it away, knowing when to be present, simple stuff. But so it's the way, even the fact that I couldn't catch my sentence just there. I feel like it has something to do with that too. Our thoughts are fragmented, our attention span is interrupted on a second by second basis.
Yeah.
Even just staying plugged into a song for 4 minutes, I feel like is a pretty amazing feat.
Well, that's funny too, because all the songs on Passwords are pretty long, which I kind of love, because it kind of gives you that the old days when you just you put the vinyl on, you shut everything else out, and you stared at the artwork and that kind of thing.
And it's cool because it's sort of it's curated a fan base for us that we're deeply grateful for. I mean, we're not the biggest band in the world, but a Dawes fan, as far as I can tell, is the kind of fan that's going to get down with a 6-minute song and not think twice about it.
Yeah.
And this sort of music fan that's looking for an instant gratification kind of thing, we're 20 seconds in, where's a hook? They don't like our band, and it's actually kind of awesome.
Isn't that awesome?
But you do have hooks in your songs.
Right, they just come in
you
a minute
definitely
and a half
have hooks, man. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Your songs they're good songs.
But you don't seem to be beholden to anything where your audience is going to be like, wait a second.
Right.
Even on We're All Gonna Die, that was supposed to be this huge shift, and as a huge fan, I was like, I don't know, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It seems like the natural evolution.
Right. And also it's you'd be bummed if you heard Nothing Is Wrong 4.0. It would just be it's we have these it would be a bummer if you wore that same shirt 3 years from now, or every day.
I plan it. Last year I wore a red shirt for
but I guess what I mean we as human beings we need to grow, we need to change, we need to bring in new words to our vocabulary, we need to get a haircut once in a while.
Yeah.
We need to just constantly be adapting to however we're feeling at that time, and bands are living organisms as well. And if a band doesn't do that, if the Stones got to Satisfaction and stayed there, and we never got to Tattoo You and Some Girls, we wouldn't be talking about them.
Right.
And I mean, and Dylan's a great example, the best example. If he stayed a protest songwriter, we wouldn't know who he was.
Yeah.
And that might infuriate some people that he didn't do something that they loved, but it's it's not only a natural thing for an artist. It's actually essential to staying an artist.
Yeah. We, again, 2 more questions I want to get to before we get out of here, because I'll die if I don't ask you these questions. But 7 albums now in the 10 years, where's that coming from? Because you guys have it down. Your album, out on the road, you're back in, and even it seems like your recording time, you're nailing that a little bit quicker too. Where's the urgency in the writing?
I don't know. It just is kind of coming out. I mean, when I look at all of those heroes that we've been talking about, and the guys that taught me how to write songs, they were doing it once a year. They would. I mean, granted, they weren't touring as much. They would put out 3 records before going on a long tour. But we, I want to look back and say that's our body of work. That's our 20 albums. That's our 25 records. I mean, I know that's asking a lot. We might not get all the way to that, but that's always been the dream. Like, one thing I love about discovering an artist is not just finding a couple great songs, but getting lost in a catalog, learning that some of these guys have 30, 40, 50 albums. Like Willie Nelson has 50 albums or something.
Elvis Costello.
Yeah, Costello is one of those guys.
He can put out 3 albums in a year.
Yeah.
And can go wherever he wants. I was talking about this the
Yeah.
other day about Bruce Springsteen, because he was saying he played the long game. Like back in the 70s
Yeah.
and 80s, he was doing things and people with hits were like, what are you doing? And he's like, playing the long game, man.
Yeah.
And those guys can go wherever they want.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And nobody says that, and their audience follows, and they love
Totally.
it. But songwriting, I told GE this when we were talking about you guys coming. I said, I think Taylor is the greatest lyricist that we have right now.
Aw.
Like, I really do mean
He's
that.
a great
Thanks,
songwriter.
man.
Like, and you know what? And I wonder if anybody's ever said this to you, but this is my feeling on it. You have this Rodney Dangerfield-esque delivery.
Wow.
Wherein, not that you're cracking jokes like Rodney, but Rodney was able to put a huge joke in this little amount of space,
Right,
this
right.
tiny bit of words. And you have that same thing,
Wow.
an honest signature on a fake ID,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that kind. When you're writing, is this stuff just coming through you? Are you thinking about it?
I guess so. I mean, I've always felt really slow on the uptake when I read like if I find some pretty obtuse songwriters or some pretty far out poets or something, that doesn't, I feel like I have a harder time accessing that than your average Joe. And that I feel like that's made me always want to distill and distill and distill so that it's something that I feel like I can understand. So I think it's really just because I frankly feel like a little more boneheaded when it comes to gleaning and reading into things.
Right.
And so it's made my songs I guess a little bit simpler. I find myself drifting towards the John Prines and guys that know how to suggest a complicated emotion through the simplest of means. Highway 61 is my favorite album. So it's obviously I'm contradicting myself a little bit right now.
Right.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When Highway 61 came out, I was in school.
Oh,
I carried it around so people would see it.
Yeah.
I carried that, the LP.
Oh, man, I would
the
do
picture.
that.
I carried it around for 6 months, man.
Oh,
look at me.
I remember being a kid and that record and Let It Bleed were the two. I remember my dad would show me the Stones and I didn't really get it and I wanted to listen to new music. And then one night I was up late working on something. I was in 8th grade or something. I had an essay and my parents were asleep and I knocked on the door. I'm like, Dad, and he woke up and he was like, what do you need? As if I was in trouble or something. And I was like, I think Let It Bleed is the greatest thing I've ever heard. And I finally rock and roll clicked from those two albums.
We all need someone we can
Yeah.
bleed on.
It's I think the Rolling Stones are the coolest band of all
Yeah.
time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's true.
Taylor Goldsmith, G.E. Smith here with us. Okay, final question. Because the radio host journalist side of me is like, oh my God, get Taylor to say something about the new record so we have a headline.
Definitely.
But then the obsessed Dawes fan is like, oh my God, get Taylor to tell you something because you want to know what's on the next record. So tell me a track. What's a song that's exciting you?
We will play one tonight. We're going to play a song called Like a Kid that we've been playing a bit. But yeah, we did it with Dave Cobb in Nashville. And we did it quick. And it probably won't be out till next year, early next year, but it's we're finalizing mixes right now.
Did you record it live like you did the last one?
This one probably more than ever. I feel they're all live, particularly all your favorite bands. But so I guess it's mostly like that, where the solos are happening on the floor, the vocals are happening on the floor. It felt like what you hear, and then a couple overdubs of background vocals maybe or a keyboard thing. It's what we did.
Any idea on an album title yet?
I wish. I'm looking for one. Let me know if you have any ideas.
I'm the Rodney Dangerfield of lyricists.
There it is.
I'm just going to put
There it
that
is,
out
by
there because
Dawes.
maybe, I'm just saying.
For Rodney.
Yeah. Full Rodney.
What are you looking forward to tonight, sharing the stage with G.E. Smith? Obviously, you know all about him.
I mean, the sound check was a blast. It was sounding really cool, and I'm really excited to talk. I mean, I'm really excited to like break it down.
My favorite thing is to get to play with a good band. There's nothing cooler than a good band, and Dawes is a real band. You know, it's just a joy to get in the middle of that.
Because like a jazz artist, you like to play around.
Yeah.
You don't want there to be a tight script.
Well,
and
I mean,
good bands.
there's the song, and you got to follow the song,
yeah, of
and you got to
course.
respect the song,
Right.
You know, but it's so easy. Like I said, it's easy to learn a good song. It's easy to play with a good band.
Absolutely, man.
And
Absolutely.
GE's a generous player. Like, we kept trying to like nod our solos his way, and he's like shaking his head like, no, you do your thing.
I played enough solos in the 80s. Man. I don't have to do that anymore.
All right, I think we'll leave it there. I'm going to retire after
Thanks,
this.
Ant.
So
Yep.
I appreciate it.
Right
Thank
on.
you guys for doing it.
Thanks, man.
That was awesome. Phenomenal, man.